Hey guys, it's V. Do you keep zoning out, or do you even know if you're zoning out or not? I definitely have been lately, so we're going to talk about what it is, what we can do to walk through it together, and I'm also going to introduce you to our latest stress hack. So let's get to it. Hey guys, it's V, Vanessa. Welcome to my channel where we discuss reigning over your life, conquering what's holding you back, and living life in victory each day using simplified strategies that work for you. And just a little quick disclaimer in case you don't know me, welcome. If you do know me, welcome. Thanks for being here. I am an actress and speaker. I host workshops, and I'm also living with post-traumatic stress disorder. I am, however, not a mental health care provider or professional. What I am is an expert in my own situation and what works for me, and my hope is that by sharing these strategies with you, they will help you just like they've helped me and so many others. So let's get to what we're talking about today. How are you feeling? Because if you are feeling how I have felt the past week and a half to 2 weeks, probably pretty off in a lot of different ways. And I definitely can say that I have been experiencing a lot of extra zoning out than usual, which has definitely gotten in the way of a lot of aspects of my life, including trying to get this video together and chat to you guys about zoning out. And I've also noticed that I've been resorting to a lot of old habits. And I think a lot of us have been doing that during this pandemic. So we're going to talk about that today. Okay, so zoning out or dissociation. We'll get to that word in just a second, but
No, we don't, because just like zoning out, I totally forgot to tell you what it is. So here you go. Zoning out is often referred to as a mild form of what's called dissociation, which in layman's terms is basically someone experiencing a feeling of disconnection from one's self or situation. And we will get to that in just a sec.
basically, we all tend to do it, and it's not really considered something that's negative unless it starts to get in the way of us living our best lives or being our best selves. A couple examples of zoning out are the usual one that you hear about where you're driving along and suddenly you realize you've missed your exit. And you kind of go back and you go, oh my gosh, I was lost in thought, or I was daydreaming, I was thinking about what I was going to make for dinner. That's definitely a form of zoning out. Or if you're in class in school or college and it's a really boring class and you just sort of miss chunks of that class because you just kind of faded out and fogged out and you started thinking about what fun things you wanted to do over the weekend. Or if you're in a meeting at work, same thing. And so there's lots of different times in our lives and lots of different ways that we can sort of zone out, and it can just help us get through the situation that we're in. Now, there is a spectrum to zoning out and dissociating, but because really the main core and reasoning behind doing today's video has to do with the pandemic and everything, we're going to talk mostly today about the more mild form of zoning out, the zoning out that most of us are probably experiencing, even if it's a little extra right now because of the pandemic. We're going to sort of stay within the mild form of dissociating, and I'll try and really break it down and make it more digestible, talking about the basics and stuff. That way we don't get extra overwhelmed more than we already feel, and that way we can sort of understand it together and talk about things that we can do to fix it in a more approachable way. Quick side note, I definitely do plan to do videos in the future having to do with zoning out involving post-traumatic stress disorder, because that's definitely something that I dealt with prior to my diagnosis and afterwards with flashbacks and everything like that. So it's a very important subject, and I do want to cover it. So feel free to keep an eye out for that, and also feel free to private message me. As always, I'm more than willing to discuss stuff one-on-one. There are 3 key ways that we can feel zoned out or dissociated. One of those ways is physical. So we may feel physically numb or sort of removed from ourselves depending on how deeply we're zoned out or dissociated. The second way is emotional. So if you are experiencing numbness to your emotions, you're not really feeling very much, or perhaps you're not caring as much about things that you used to care about. And the third key way that we can dissociate is mentally. So perhaps we are, like I talked about in the beginning, missing chunks of time while driving or listening to music or something like that. We can also just feel a little swirly with our thoughts, foggy brained. Our memory may not be that great because we weren't present when we were learning about calculus or something like that. And a lot of these examples are very not traumatizing examples that I'm giving, but absolutely, if you're going through something like, unfortunately, an abusive situation or the pandemic or something that is much more upsetting and triggering emotionally, you can also experience, of course, dissociation in all three of these ways. And it may also be a little bit more extreme because the situation calls for more dissociation to handle what's occurring, that you may not feel you can physically escape, if that makes sense. So why does zoning out / dissociation occur? Basically, when we zone out, it is a way for our brain to help us survive a situation. And if you haven't seen my previous video on the brain under stress, I'm going to link that below. That will probably help you to understand this video a little bit better. If you've already seen it, then this video is probably much more self-explanatory to you. So zoning out / dissociation is basically, it's a coping skill, right? It helps us deal with situations without us having to necessarily physically leave the situation. So it's sort of, we're distancing ourselves inside to help deal with uncomfortable or bored or scary situations that we feel like we can't physically exit. So with the pandemic, if you're feeling or noticing that you are experiencing these things a little bit more than perhaps you used to, this can definitely be a sign for us that the situation, it might be affecting us more than we actually realize, because our brain may be feeling, with the pandemic as an example, that we are caught in a situation that is dangerous, that is long-term, that we cannot physically escape from. And so how our brain, whether we realize it or not, may be causing us to handle the situation so that it doesn't feel as overwhelming, or we don't feel so raw to it, is we start to zone out a little bit or distract ourselves, either just by daydreaming or by watching more TV, being on our phones more often, doing a lot of projects, really distracting ourselves and sort of becoming focused on things that aren't as intense or upsetting as the pandemic itself. And that applies to lots of things, you know, in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be the pandemic, but there's a lot of ways that we can sort of dissociate ourselves or zone out from upsetting situations or stressful situations. And so if you're finding that you're sort of experiencing those sensations that we talked about, those three key ways of sort of zoning out from the present, the pandemic or situation that you're in might be affecting you more than you realize, and that might be something that you want to address. And so our reaction to stress and anxiety and negative situations and triggers that result in us zoning out can really negatively affect us. It can affect our job performance, or how we do in school, or how our kids do in school. So it's definitely something that's important to talk about and important to recognize. But I do want to talk about some of the positive things that zoning out can actually do for us, because like I said, it is a coping skill and there's a reason that we do it. So let's talk about that. One of the ways that zoning out / dissociating can be positive is by doing kind of what I just talked about, where it can help us walk through or get through a situation that is scary or dangerous or feels uncomfortable in a way where we feel less raw, less stimulated, more protected, and more sustainable. It can also, that can apply to situations even if they're not extreme, like social interactions. For me, I can easily feel social anxiety. I feel overly stimulated. I sometimes don't feel like I can last very long in social situations. So by zoning out a little bit, that can help us to have more sustainability in that situation and enjoy ourselves even more. And I love being social, but again, sometimes it can just be really draining. Another way that it can help is by helping us to sort of hyper focus. So in my stress, worry, and anxiety video, I do touch on problem solving. This can help us problem solve. So it's a great coping skill if we sort of zone out from the present situation around us, even if it's a fine and safe situation, and we put that focus into and zone into studying for an exam or getting a report done or problem solving a certain thing. Zoning out and zoning into that can be helpful when we choose to do it. And that's the last thing is, when we choose to use this coping skill, it can actually really benefit us. But the key is choosing to use it and choosing to not use it. And so we are going to touch on that. As usual, there are a lot of ways that we can tackle everything that we kind of talk about here on this channel, as well as zoning out / dissociating. But we are going to touch on some key things that we can do starting today. Now, for me personally, with my post-traumatic stress disorder, I was experiencing a lot of flashbacks and a lot of zoning out before I got diagnosed. And so when I did get diagnosed, that was definitely one of the things that we focused on, was how I could function in a really beneficial, great, awesome way, living in the present and not experiencing flashbacks as much. And so some of the things that I had to do was to do a lot of what we talk about on this channel. Relax, understand what was going on with me, understand mechanically what was going on with me, learning what my triggers were that were triggering me to sort of zone out and not want to feel present, and stuff like that. And again, I am going to get into that in future videos because it is extremely important, and I want to share that experience with you for sure. But again, because of the pandemic and what we're all experiencing right now, I really do want to focus on some key things that we can do for the experience that we're all going through right now. Some of the key things that I found and find really worked for me that I'm going to suggest here today is firstly, understanding mechanically what is occurring, right? With ourselves, with our brain, when we're zoning out, are we zoning out? Things like that. That can really inform us of the situation, how we're reacting to it, and how it might be affecting us in ways that we may not be aware of. The second thing is reminding ourselves and reassuring ourselves that we are in fact safe. Now, I say that a lot on this channel, but it really can be key because we understand mechanically that feeling unsafe is the root of a lot of what we might be experiencing. So if we are in fact in a safe environment, doing things like not only speaking it out loud or speaking it in our minds, but also doing things where we don't necessarily have to think about being safe. It's just naturally reminding us that we are. So comfy things. We talked about sensory stuff last week, using sensory ways to help us feel more safe. Having a quiet environment around us, or just removing things off of our schedule. Things like that can just help us naturally feel safe without us having to put a lot of thought into it. The third thing is identifying our triggers, which again, we talk a lot about on this channel, but it is actually really helpful because it's going to help us to understand not only what's going on if we realize that we are or have been zoned out, or if we recognize that there's a situation coming up that might cause us to want to feel like zoning out. And is that okay? Do we want that to occur? Choosing to have that occur or not occur, and what steps can we take that are healthier to help us do one or the other. Next is addressing these triggers and or our zoning out or dissociation in healthier ways. So once we figured out what is triggering our zoning out, how do we address that in a way that works for us and that's actually healthier for us? I do plan to cover some of these ideas in next week's video, so keep an eye out for that. But one thing that I would suggest is trying not to plunge ourselves or shock ourselves out of being zoned out on a regular basis, because that can actually cause our brain to be even more fearful or more against being present. So instead, trying to really ease ourselves into the present can help it be a more comfortable situation and experience for us, but also our brain, and can help encourage us to be in the present more. Now, side note, shocking ourselves into the present can be really helpful, and we do cover those things on this channel. But really on a regular basis, I have found in my own experience to just ease myself into it actually tends to have a better long-term effect. Next is using the tools that we talk about on this channel, especially those stress hacks. Last week we discussed a sensory toolkit that we did. There's the 5 things sensory segment that we covered. I will definitely link those below. And there's a lot of other ones that we've covered where using stress hacks and the senses can really help us stop being zoned out, being more present, and feeling more safe in the present. So I highly recommend that. And that actually takes me into the final thing that we're going to talk about today. This stress hack has been with me pretty much every single day for years now. In fact, I don't remember when I started doing it. I know that it's something that I started doing quite naturally, because when we go over this hack, I think you'll probably understand what I mean by that. But it's sort of a move that we tend to do, I guess, when we're stressed. And I just happened to notice how it made me feel. It made me feel really grounded, very centered. It helped me to not feel as zoned out as much and sort of reconnect with my body. And it also helped calm me down. And I think that was the number one thing for me, was that it just really helped drain out all that stress and anxiety that I was feeling. And so this is definitely something that I tend to do a lot without even really thinking about it. So maybe that's something that you find that you want to do as well. One of the reasons that I haven't covered it yet is because it does involve touching our bodies. And during this pandemic, that's not really something that a lot of us feel comfortable doing, especially outside of the house. But if it is something that you feel comfortable doing, go ahead. I know a lot of us are changing our clothes when we get home and everything. Or if you just feel comfortable only using this in your house, that's okay too. So really, again, as always, make it work for you, customize it to what works for you, and all that jazz. All right, so let's do it, and I'll walk us through it together. It's a very simple, easy thing that we can do, and it is great for using it in public because it's really not something that's going to bring a lot of attention that has a huge impact. At least that's what I found. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our hands, it doesn't matter, and we're going to gently place it on our sternum. So right on our chest, our upper chest right here. And we're just going to hold it there. And I can already feel it working. So we're just going to hold that hand there and just breathe. And noticing that touch that our hand has on our chest and that our chest has on our hand. feeling the breath going in and out of our body. You can have your eyes open or shut, doesn't matter, but really just trying to feel that sensation of stress and anxiety escaping the body. And what you also might sense is that feeling that I talked about a few seconds ago, about feeling more centered, about feeling more connected and grounded to not only your surroundings, but really yourself. Because one of those things that we talked about that has to do with zoning out and dissociation is that numbness that we might feel physically. This can help us return to that feeling of groundedness and centeredness within us. And so just noticing, we talked about sensory last week and a few segments before that. Noticing what we feel. What does our hand feel in this moment? What I feel is my heart beating. And just noticing that sense, that sensation in my chest is going to help wake up those different parts of my brain and help bring me to present. But I also find it to be a little reassuring that I have myself. I can feel life and rhythm within me. This is me, and I'm feeling me alive. And that feels really cool. Even if I don't think about it in that way, in that sense, feeling life within me helps me feel like I'm coming alive as well. Noticing if we can feel the breath going in and out as we inhale and exhale. And what this also can do is just key us into just where our level of anxiety or stress is. Is our heart beating fast? Is it slow? Is our breath fast or slow? Good. And I invite us to just put a little added pressure, especially if you feel extra stressed right now, or if you feel like this stress hack may not be working for you as much as you'd like it to be, just adding a little bit more pressure right onto our sternum. And sometimes what I also like to do, especially if I'm in public, is just clear my throat a little bit, because that adds a little bit more vibration. So go ahead and try that. Just go and really hold out that last part. You can also because what that's doing is creating this vibration that we can feel, we can hear, and it's helping us to feel a little bit more connected as well. Go ahead, if you'd like, you can keep your hand here or return it at your side. And so I'm feeling so much more relaxed right now. I'm just feeling my energy. I'm feeling energetic because I'm feeling happier. I'm actually feeling positive emotions, but I'm also feeling calmer. So I really feel much more balanced and much more like my best self. I'm much more aware of my surroundings, how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, how my body feels, and I just feel like I've returned back to life a little bit. And that's what I want for all of us, all the time. But especially when we're choosing to either use this coping skill or not, or if we're realizing that we are stuck in some sort of zoning out or dissociation and we want to get back to it. Doing this simple move has been a go-to for me on a daily basis. If you've seen me at the gym, you've probably seen me before class just standing there doing this, tapping my fingers, moving my hand a little bit if I need that. But really most of the time it's just here applying a little bit of pressure, because without even thinking about it, it's just helping me calm and balance and feel better and get ready for class. So you can really use this anywhere, anytime, and people may or may not notice, but even if they do notice, they're not going to really know what you're doing. So I think it's a fantastic option. If the stress hack did not work for you, it's all good. As usual, stress hacks don't always work for everyone or work for us every single time. So having a bevy of them can actually be really helpful. But I encourage us all to try these things out and try the stress hack out moving forward, because it may end up working for you or better for you the more that we try it out, whether we think we need it or not in the moment. So that's my little side tip for you. And as usual, if you feel that you need some additional help with whatever it is that you are going through, I encourage us to reach out to a mental health care professional or a healthcare professional, self-advocating for ourselves and really making sure that we are taking our health and our self-care and our happiness into our own hands. And being honest with ourselves about what our needs are can be extremely vital, especially during times like this. And so just making sure that it's someone that you feel comfortable with and that you connect with is extremely important. So that's about it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm really happy you were here. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like or dislike this video, it's cool either way, as always. Connect with me on social media. I would love to connect with you. Those links are below. Comment below if you have questions or comments, or as usual, private message me. I think that's it. So just remember, let's all live in the moment, and I will see you next time. It's gonna be a great day. Bye guys, see ya.